Is our country not greater when all of us have opportunities to succeed and contribute and survive? Our success and our survival as a nation is bound together. Diversity, equity, and inclusion programs only exist to band-aid over decades, hell, centuries of discrimination against people's skin color, their religion, disabilities, gender, or sexual orientations, you name it. Contrary to Republican conjecture, remedying past discrimination is not, in turn, a discrimination. And we're not going to sit here and pretend racism is over just because one black person on the Supreme Court agreed that it should be.
Pennsylvania progressive Summer Lee was spitting fire during this congressional hearing about a bill that would effectively eliminate all federal diversity, equity, and inclusion. All of those programs gone. Hear for yourself what H.R. 8706 is proposing.
H.R. 8706 aims to repeal the federal DEI programs across the federal government. This bill prohibits funding for such programs and creates a new Civil Rights Act protection against requiring individuals to participate in such programs. The bill will lend legislative support to the incoming Trump administration's efforts to eradicate the Biden-Harris administration's entrenchment of leftist DEI policies in the executive branch.
In spite of the altruistic motives of some of the purveyors of it, diversity, equity, inclusion, as it's been initiated in our federal government as an ideology, seeks to categorize individuals based on their immutable characteristics. It is a rejection of the principle that people should be judged on the content of their character and their individual achievement rather than their sex, race, national origin, or ethnicity. DEI is a huge step backwards for our country. But to codify discrimination in an effort to remove discrimination is a woeful initiative and would undo generations of progress we have made as a nation on this. Every tear, every drop of blood, the sweat of our founders, our forefathers that have fallen would be in vain for us to continue and to reverse the path that we have. It seeks to close the DEI offices that have been set up in virtually every single agency. And as well, this federal government has pushed these policies and sort of force-fed them on the American population by requiring that anyone who does business with the federal government, contractors, also have to adhere to these DEI policies, as well as the grant writing process. DEI ideology also results in absurd government-funded programs, and it's been a complete waste of taxpayer dollars, and is dangerous, as sometimes people who do not have the competencies to carry out the job are placed in jobs for DEI reasons.
Now let's break down what Comer and Cloud have wrong about DEI programs. Their arguments frame these initiatives as leftist, indoctrination, discriminatory policies, or waste of resources. But in reality, DEI programs have consistently proven to create equitable opportunities, increase workplace productivity, and bridge systemic gaps that have historically marginalized groups of Americans. What's even more frustrating is their use of dog whistles, of course, and oversimplified attacks to paint DEI as a threat rather than an opportunity for national progress.
What it maybe would more aptly be called the dismantling any semblance of support or opportunity for certain American acts. And we know who those Americans are. Americans who have not enjoyed centuries of unfair advantages by keeping others enslaved or segregated or disenfranchised or incarcerated or redlined or gerrymandered or excluded by law. Americans who've lived with disabilities or had their relationships criminalized or their gender expression demonized. If we're being honest here, this bill, which will wipe out every diversity, equity, and inclusion program in our federal agencies, plus those who contract with us, plus those who receive grant money, plus our schools, is nothing new. This is just the final piece of a decades-long obsession with targeting and dismantling anything that might give marginalized people a fair shot, including DEI programs, which honestly started the second the Civil Rights Act passed. Policies like affirmative action and diversity, equity, inclusion are the closest things we've had to the mythical bootstraps that some of my colleagues insist historically and currently harmed communities need to pick themselves up by. After centuries of efforts to keep us out of schools and universities, from jobs and elected office, Republicans targeting these policies are no accident.
Highlighting all of these historical examples of federal programs that were supposedly designed to level the playing field between discriminated groups, yes, they exist, and the white in-group is a brilliant way to show that the fight for justice and equality has never stopped. It won't stop as long as certain groups feel threatened by the success of others. Summer Lee's argument is, well, it's a powerful reminder that these fights are far from over.
DEI is not given any unfair advantage that society itself does not already confer on certain Americans. It merely exists to ensure that all other people, that women, minoritized folks, queer folks, disabled folks, have the same opportunities to succeed and thrive in our workforce and our schools as people who have not had those opportunities systematically and legally stripped from them do. What DEI does not do is give some kind of magical pass to better jobs, like some of our colleagues are implying. That middle word, equity, does not mean more than or better than. It means treating people fairly and impartially. It means working to fix generational and systemic discrimination to the betterment of all of us and all of our institutions. But instead, Republicans are trying to bastardize the term DEI to be a slur. When Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson was up for confirmation and when Vice President Harris was added to the ticket, they called them DEI hires. They want you to believe that a Harvard graduate with over 20 years of experience, who happens to be a black woman, is not qualified, but a Fox News personality is qualified to run the Department of Defense, and the WWE executive is qualified to run the Department of Education. Let's be real. There is an attempt to create a direct correlation between our race, being a black person, and our qualifications. So much as to say that there is no way to be a black woman. There is no resume that a black person could have that would qualify them unless that black person is a Republican, and there is a quota there. And while all of this has happened at the top level of our government, I can promise you these same things are happening on every single level of government and private sector. But those people don't have a national platform to speak out against discriminatory treatment. Where is a federal worker supposed to turn when another coworker says a racist comment to them in the break room? Where is the same-sex couple who is denied housing supposed to, because of their relationship, supposed to turn? Where is a pregnant woman who was fired for being pregnant supposed to go? Often the only place that they have to give them recourse are the diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. These folks just want to do their jobs, serving the American people in an environment that feels safe and supports them. Making work a better, safer environment for some does not mean it automatically is worse for others. And those complaining about DEI training are probably the ones who need it the most. My Republican colleagues have got to stop punching down on already marginalized communities and face their own fears of a level playing field privately. It's shameful.
What I found most effective in Summer Lee's testimony is her direct call out of the Republicans' demonization of DEI as a dog whistle. Historically, these terms, well, they've been twisted into slurs that play into stereotypes and fears of the base. The sheer absurdity of turning DEI programs into a major political crisis says more about their priorities than anything else. The hearing revealed just how far some leaders will go to distract from addressing systemic inequality.
This bill, titled the Dismantling DEI Act, is an utter disgrace. Having sat and read the text in preparation for today's markup, I have yet another example to tell my constituents about the unserious work of the Republican Party. Now, I'll work with anyone serious about progress who wants to center the people who call this country home. This isn't it. The Committee on Oversight has the broadest jurisdiction in the entire House of Representatives to investigate any topic it chooses, but we are debating legislation that denies the sky is blue, water is wet, and racism is real. The major provision of the bill says to ban anything that acknowledges racism. And a few pages later in the exact same bill, there are multiple provisions discussing the presence of racism. This Republican approach is as predictable as it is nonsensical. On one hand, they're saying that racism does not exist. On the other hand, they are saying there is rampant reverse racism. Well, how do you reverse something that never existed in the first place? Riddle me that. While this Republican policy may have a new name, it's the same old tired game. Look, y'all are entitled to your opinions, but not a denial of the facts. Do you all know your history? Do you know American history? The original Constitution counted enslaved individuals as 3/5 of a person. During World War II, the federal government forcibly relocated and incarcerated 110,000 Japanese Americans. The FHA practiced redlining in the 1930s and 60s to deny mortgages to Black Americans, which is why we have a racial wealth gap today. I could go on. The GI Bill, which is supposed to be race neutral, denied access to Black Americans, denying them equal access to education and housing benefits, which is why we do not have generational wealth. Don't talk to me about merit when those Black servicemen fought for our freedom. Please keep Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s name out of your mouths. Yes. Your perversion of his words and his mission when his children have asked you to stop invoking his name and perverting his work when he was a proud and unapologetic Black man fighting for equality for Black Americans and all marginalized people. A colleague across the aisle invoked the phrase of, "We must do everything to stop government-sponsored oppression." Well, I've just enumerated numerous examples, which is exactly why we have legislation and an executive order to reverse this harm. And that is why I'm committed to opposing this bill and urge my colleagues to do the same.
Ayanna Pressley's testimony was yet another powerful moment, highlighting the real economic and social benefits of keeping DEI programs in place. These programs, they're not just about representation, of course. They have tangible economic advantages. Companies with strong DEI initiatives consistently outperform their peers. And these principles, they extend to broader societal success. Even if you're not directly participating in one of these programs, do you know the ripple effects of equity and inclusion benefit everyone? They do it by fostering innovation, reducing conflict, and creating a more just and prosperous society.